Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Thomas's Takes. And today's episode, the second episode on this channel, is a very special one for one reason. We're going to be talking about Godzilla. Specifically, we're going to be talking about Godzilla Minus One. Now, before I really give my spiel and, my opinion and everything and my analysis, let me just paint the picture for you. Let me paint the scene real quick. So we're on the journey to my local movie theater, and I decided that I wanted to play, my girlfriend and I, some old Godzilla soundtracks. I sprinkled in some songs from the original. Of course, I played the theme song, of course. From the original, I even played some from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, played some from Godzilla vs. Destroyer, so I tried to hit every single era. And I was doing this in preparation for our viewing of Godzilla Minus One, the brand new Toho installation of Godzilla, directed by Takashi Yamazaki. Now, I've been a fan of Godzilla ever since I could even begin to formulate coherent sentences, let alone having critical thinking skills. I was really excited that all these emotions were stirring up inside of me. I was like a little kid again. My girlfriend was pretty excited too. I had forced her to watch a couple of Godzilla movies just because, if you want to be in a relationship with me, that's kind of the price you have to pay. So she was just excited to see my reaction to watching the film. Now, when the film ended, when a film is just so good that when the credits start to roll, you sit there for at least 2 to 5 minutes processing what you just experienced. That's what Godzilla Minus One did to the both of us. And before I dive into my opinion and my analysis and my whole spiel again, I am going to give a warning. I am going to be discussing spoilers, and I know the film did come out about a month and a half, 2 months ago, so pretty recent. So I understand if you don't want anything spoiled if you haven't seen it yet, but honestly, dude, just go watch it. It's amazing. Save this video for later if you don't want anything spoiled. I'll be right here waiting for you. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started on this video. So Godzilla Minus One takes place towards the end of World War II, and it focuses on this specific kamikaze pilot by the name of Koichi Shikishima. And Shikishima ends up having to take an emergency landing on his plane due to technical issues. And the reason why I do air quotes is because, well, you'll see in a second. And on this particular island, you have a group of mechanics led by the lead mechanic, Tachibana. So later that night, on that island, the island is attacked by this giant prehistoric dinosaur monster that the locals like to call Godzilla. And at this point in the film, Godzilla is smaller. There's been no nuclear radiation growth from him, so he's relatively small compared to later on in the film. And even this version of Godzilla is absolutely horrifying, especially when you see with the way that the film is shot. You can see from the perspective of the humans how towering and how monstrous and scary he looks. So Tachibana, the lead mechanic, tells Shikishima to get in your damn plane, get behind that gun, and try to kill it. So what he ends up doing is he does get behind the gun in the plane, but he ends up freezing in terror. And due to his cowardice behavior that night, he gets knocked unconscious by Godzilla by his tail, and he wakes up the next morning and he finds out that due to his cowardice act, that the entire fleet of mechanics, except for Tachibana, had died in the Godzilla attack. So as a result of this, Tachibana ends up blaming him for the deaths. And eventually Shikishima, throughout the film, carries ghosts with him. And by ghost, I mean survivor's guilt, which is a form of PTSD where you survive an incident where others did not, and you see people die in front of you. So, this particular scene is very tragic for many reasons. And one of those reasons for me personally is I truly believe that a lot of us, if we were in Shikishima's shoes, we probably would have end up having the same result, because a lot of us if we're experiencing this giant lizard thing, I feel like 80% of us would definitely choose the flight and the fight or flight response. Especially when you're seeing something that's so beyond what we see every day, that challenges our beliefs of our own realities. So, it's a great way to set up this film, and I was like, oh man, we are in for a big ride. This film is going to be dark, which is what I've wanted from a Godzilla film. Following the events on the island, Shigeshima returns back to completely decimated Tokyo after the events of the bombings, and he ends up getting this minesweeper job where he goes out with a crew, and he essentially goes out into the ocean, and he takes a gun on the back of this boat, and he starts shooting all these mines to clear them out. And he gets this job because he's supporting this young woman named Noriko and this little girl whom Noriko rescued named Akiko. Probably the cutest little girl you've ever seen in the history of cinema. Like, she's so just like a bundle of adorable. So then we soon find out that Godzilla has mutated and grown because of the Bikini Atoll test done by the US government. So Bro is juiced up now. Like, Bro has gotten way bigger compared to the first scene in the film. So, and then you find out that Godzilla, he ends up setting course for Tokyo, and along the way he just absolutely destroys all these American warships like it was nothing to him. And the Japanese government decides not to notify the public about this because they don't want to stir any kind of mass hysteria, which is a method, I'll be honest. And this is honestly such a huge theme in the film, how the people that are being affected most by this, not the people at the top making these decisions, see the people at the bottom as their lives being expendable, and they'll just do whatever they say. Like, for example, the kamikaze pilots are told by the government that, hey, if you follow through with your mission, you'll be doing your country a service, you'll be building a better future for your kids, your grandkids, and the people down here, it's like, well, nothing seems to be getting better, and there's no guarantee of that, so it just feels like you're just throwing my life away. And this is a very powerful theme that is a motif throughout Godzilla Minus One, and it's just one of those emotionally heavy topics that can really affect you, and that you can clearly see while watching. So then later on, Shigeshima and his crew are sent out to try and stall Godzilla's path to Tokyo by getting on the automatic weapon that he has on the back of his boat and blowing up mines to try to stop him. Like, that's adorable. You really think that's going to work? And much to no avail, shockingly, it doesn't work. They even try putting a mine into Godzilla's mouth and blowing it up that way. Even that doesn't work, because as soon as that explosion happens in his mouth, immediately starts to regenerate like it was nothing. Like, you can literally see in this particular scene, the CGI is so good that you can literally see the cells in his mouth like slowly start to come back. And in that moment, it just felt like Godzilla was an unstoppable force of nature. Even like beyond nature, like something that almost godlike. And this particular scene I really, really liked. It was one of my favorite scenes in the whole film, because the moment where you see a POV shot of Godzilla swimming towards the boat, it truly felt like he was just a bigger, scarier version of Jaws. Like, it was very Jaws-like in that moment. And it almost felt like he was insurmountable. Like, nothing, it almost felt hopeless in that moment. And I truly feel like that Takashi was trying to capture that feeling of, oh shit, that's terrifying, while also being like, how can we possibly kill this thing? So after the failed attempt to stall Godzilla's path to Tokyo, Godzilla ends up arriving in Japan, and he begins his path of destruction and chaos, to say the least. He ends up attacking Ginza, which is where Noriko actually works her brand new job that she had just got, and she barely survives a Godzilla attack. Like, she's literally on the train, going to her job, and she looks out the window and she sees, and she's like, bro, is that Godzilla? Holy shit! He's literally coming right at me. She was just like in awe of like, wow, that's actually him. Like, he's on his way. And Godzilla's marching towards the train, and he literally munches on the train, picks it up like it's a $5 footlong from Subway, and Noriko is literally hanging on for dear life, trying not to die, and she sees an opening. She sees that Godzilla's waving the subway train around like nothing, and she looks down and she sees that she's above a body of water, and she decides to let go, and she drops into the body of water and survives that attack. I can't even begin to imagine what that must be like. My body would probably just like shut down in fear, to be honest with you. So what ends up happening, Godzilla gets really pissed off because, people are trying to stop him on his path. This is the first time you get to see Godzilla's atomic ray, or his heat ray. His dorsal plates start charging up. You can even hear this like buzzing sound of his dorsal plates getting energized and getting ready to use his heat ray. And he ends up annihilating, and I mean annihilating, Ginza with just one heat ray. And the effects of Godzilla's heat ray was brilliantly done, because as soon as he shot out the heat ray, there was boom, big mushroom cloud, almost as if like it was reminiscent of a atomic bomb dropping. And one thing I particularly noticed in this scene was the sound design and the delay of sound of the explosion. By the time Godzilla shot his heat ray out, gave it a very realistic feel of something that is just so fantastical and beyond our what we'd see on a daily basis, And after surviving the initial Godzilla launch on the subway, Noriko actually ends up perishing in the Godzilla heat ray. She pushes aside Shikishima to save him, and she seemingly perishes as well. Now, this only adds onto the guilt that Shikishima was experiencing through the events that happened onto the island, so you can only imagine what this probably could have done to his psyche. So after this, Shikishima is on a path to destroy Godzilla once and for all that he's taken from him. And due to the Japanese government's lack of action or complicitness, one of the minesweepers, whose name is Kenji Soda, he's kind of like the scientist character amongst the crew. He's honestly one of my favorite characters in the film, and he's actually, I think he's a fan favorite based off of like posts that I've seen on the internet and stuff, and he's I would consider him like one of the comedic reliefs of the film, because it is a very dark film. But he devises a plan that hopefully is going to defeat Godzilla, theoretically. You find out that he's actually in this private civilian group that is all tired of the government's inaction towards this ordeal. So what his plan is that it's going to consist of luring Godzilla out into the bay, away from the city. He then theorizes that they could sink Godzilla, surrounding him with a bunch of Freon tanks and destroying the Freon tanks. And what this will do is it should lower the buoyancy of the water and sink Godzilla to the bottom and hopefully drown him and keep him there. Now, their plan B, if plan A doesn't work out, if that were to fail, they would essentially inflate these balloons, bringing Godzilla to the surfaces, and then hopefully he's dead due to something called explosive decompression, which per definition is violent and too fast for air to escape safely from the lungs and other air-filled cavities in the body, resulting in severe or fatal barotrauma. So essentially, in layman's terms, it's the sudden change in pressure in the water that's going to make Godzilla's lungs collapse in and on itself, and that is the theory that they're going to test out to hopefully defeat Godzilla. We'll see how it goes. Now, the next question you may ask is, who is going to be the one to lure out Godzilla into the bay? you could probably guessed it based off of how this video is gone. Yeah, it's going to be Shikishima because he wants to lead the charge. He feels like he's lost so much because of Godzilla. He wants to be the one to do it. So what Shikishima ends up doing is he actually ends up trying to recruit Tachibana. And if you remember, Tachibana is the lead mechanic who was on the island in the very first scene in which all those men died. Now remember, the history between them is not great because Tachibana blamed Shikishima for all those deaths. So this was going to be a little bit of a tricky ask for Shikishima to have him do this. And what he ends up doing is which I don't know if this was like the best method, but it worked. Shikishima put it out in this newspaper that Tachibana was the one to blame for all the deaths of those men on that day. And what Shikishima was thinking was that it would piss him off so much that he would actually come out and find him. And then Shikishima would be like, oh, I'm sorry, I just wanted to make you mad so you could come out here so I can ask you. It was the only way that I could think of it. It's a method, that's for sure. But, so he ends up actually recruiting Tachibana, and he recruits him to repair a broken down Kyushu J-7W fighter plane, which is a plane that wasn't really used anymore at the time. And this is the plane that Shikishima wants to use to carry out his mission to lure out Godzilla. And if all else fails, Shikishima's plan B is to commit suicide by flying into Godzilla's mouth and detonating the explosive so he can get rid of those ghosts and finally set out on the mission that he was initially sent out to do, basically, which was to die. So what he ends up doing is that he leaves a note for his neighbor, Samiko, with some money in it and a letter saying that please take care of Akiko if I don't make it. Man, and this is a really heartbreaking because you're just looking at the little girl. She doesn't understand the levity of the situation or really what's going on. But she starts crying, and you can get a sense that even a child that small can sense that something is wrong, even though they don't necessarily know what's happening. So once Godzilla comes out of the abyss, it's time to initiate Plan A. Godzilla inevitably survives Plan A, so they have to bring Godzilla back to the surface. And with the help of a fleet of tugboats, they were actually able to bring Godzilla back to the surface. Godzilla had survived each attempt at the plan. Now, a very pissed off and a very angry Godzilla is charging up his dorsal fins, which means that heat ray is coming in hot and ready, like that Little Caesars pizza. Like, it is hot and it is ready, dude. It's coming for you. As Godzilla is charging up, Shikishima is making a beeline straight towards his mouth, ready for his final moments, preparing for death and whatever may come after that. We don't know. So then we cut back. We have a little flashback moment where you see Tachibana is working on the ship and repairing it, and he's showing Shikishima each compartment inside of the cockpit, and he shows that he installed an ejection button in there. And he has this realization, even though Tachibana was very upset with him with the way things went, and he doesn't like the way that Shikishima tried to reach out to him, he realizes that he can carry out this mission without having to die. Like, what is the point of having to die? He needs to live. He has this little girl now who will be orphaned again if he decides to go through with his initial mission. So he tells Shikishima, live. You don't have to die. And to me, this is one of the most emotionally resonant scenes in the film. And so, as a result of this, I think it's a moment where Shikishima realizes that he can start to release all of this guilt that he was feeling, that this guy who went through just as much as he did and was one of the ones blaming him for all these tragedies, tells him, live. You don't have to die. So he has this giant monkey lifted off his shoulders due to that. So after this, the plane goes straight into the mouth of Godzilla and it explodes, seemingly killing Godzilla. The plane getting lodged in his mouth like that was essentially blocking his heat ray charge up, and his heat ray exploded like throughout his body, like his heat ray was shooting out of his rib cage and essentially exploding or imploding him, and piercing his body. And after all of that, Shikishima visits the hospital. He finds that Noriko had actually survived the Godzilla attack, and this was a moment where the family became a family. All the demons that he was facing have been lifted. He finds out that this woman that he had taken in had survived, and everything seemed fine and dandy until the final scene, panning to the bottom of the ocean, showing that Godzilla is recharging. His cells are coming back. It's just like a lump of skin, and it's all slowly coming back. You can never kill him. You just can't. So after some thought and some time, because I've seen the movie twice now, I plan on seeing it a third time. I'm hoping that I can actually catch the new Godzilla -1 color black and white edition. Hopefully I can catch that before it exits theaters. After I've had some time to reflect, and I'm going to say this with confidence, I think this might be my favorite Godzilla movie of all time, including all of the legendary films, including all of the previous Toho films. Yes, even over the original. Because I truly felt like this Godzilla -1 feels almost like a disciple of the original, only with more advanced filmmaking capabilities, with the ability to just make something that wasn't possible in the 1950s. And for that reason, I am gonna say it. Godzilla -1 is the best Godzilla movie of all time. Now, to close with that, I do want to talk a little bit about why I believe Godzilla has been so successful over these years. Now 70 years. It's 2024 now, and it's the 70th anniversary of Godzilla. So, I think the main reason why Godzilla has been so successful and so relevant all these years is because of the different ways you can portray him, and it still works, even if it's goofy, you know? Godzilla has been portrayed anywhere from a bad guy, a good guy, a role model, if you know what I'm referring to. In Godzilla's Revenge, that was like an anti-bullying message. In the new Legendary installments, he's portrayed as this neutral force that keeps the Titans and Hollow Earth at bay while also keeping the humans here, trying to keep the peace. He's not good nor bad. He's also seen as straight up evil, which I believe this is the version of Godzilla in Godzilla -1. So there's many ways throughout the years that Godzilla has been portrayed, and it still feels fresh and new and fun. It could be anywhere from fun to dark to comedic, like when he was doing the dropkick in Godzilla vs. Megalon. One of the best scenes in any Godzilla film, by the way. Or like when he flies by like shooting his heat ray at the bottom in Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. And between that and the iconic soundtrack and the iconic roar, there's just so many elements as to why Godzilla has been so successful throughout the years. Alright everyone, and that's pretty much the video for today. I want to thank you for watching this video. This is only my second video, and I plan on cranking out a lot more. And as soon as I get into the groove of this thing, I'm gonna be having a more consistent uploading schedule, so you guys will know when to expect to see my videos. So yeah, thanks for checking out my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See you next time.